Hello, and just a quick few thoughts about appendices in your thesis or final report or dissertation. And I teach this in my course about completing your thesis or final report or dissertation and actually how to pass that document. But a quick tip about appendices is to use them on one hand a bit like a filing system, not for all the detail of your study, but important reference information and even documents that you wouldn't normally put in the body of your thesis because it would obscure the flow of your argument and the primary intention of each section, but which may be important for the reader to have easy access to. So let me give you a couple of examples of what you would put in an appendix, and also why I say that it's a bit like a filing system and can be very useful for you just to get organized even throughout the whole of your study right from the very beginning. So let's say, for example, you're doing interviews. You're going to have to get ethics clearance from your institution, and typically there'll be a process for you to go through that. You either get a medical clearance process to do research or a non-medical research process, and you'll get then a certificate from your institution to say that according to a certain clearance number you're able to go ahead and do the research on the basis of how you explained that you were going to proceed with it. And there'll be some other important information such as the information sheet that you would send to your participants or your people that you'd be interviewing, etc. So what I did in my PhD, and I found this incredibly useful, was as soon as documentation like that became available, and I knew it was something that I would include in my final report, even if that was going to be in 2 or 3 years' time, I actually just put it in one of the appendices straight away. I didn't leave it on a folder somewhere on my computer and rely on my ability to go and find it when I needed it at the time. And putting it in the appendix as early on as possible meant that I could tick that off. So in my appendices, for example, I'm just looking at it now, my Appendix A was my ethics clearance certificate. Then typically, and for the process that I went through, you'd have an information sheet, so what your study is about, and you'd send that to the participants in your study. Then there would be the consent form. So each participant would have to sign and complete a consent form to say they give consent to you doing research on them through that interview on the basis of the information that you've sent them. So for me, that was Appendix A, B, and C, which were important for the examiner to see that I had completed the ethics clearance process, and also for the institution to ensure that I was complying with the requirements, which was to make sure that certificate was always available and that I had actually completed and sent out those information forms. Now, in my methodology, for example, I refer to that information sheet, and I say as part of the practicalities, I sent that information sheet out, and then when people agreed to do an interview, I got them to complete the consent form, send it back to me, and I of course kept all of those on record just in case anybody would ever want them in the future. But samples of those are what I then put into the appendices, and it saved me time because it was safely in my appendices and I didn't have to go back and look for it when I came to actually writing up my report at a later stage. And throughout your degree, you will have, for example, discussion papers where you maybe take a snapshot of your research and you package it into a little bit of a more formal document where you would discuss it with your supervisors. And I teach this in the course as well. It just creates a little bit of a milestone in your degree as you go through, rather than waiting to type up everything at the end of your degree when you actually have to sign submit it and send it in. So a couple of other appendices of mine were some of these discussion papers or extracts from those discussion papers, whereby it captured a point in time of my study and it was relevant in the discussion of either the methodology or the practicalities that I encountered, or even in the findings. It was useful just to say, see appendix for additional insights about some analysis I did at this point in completing my degree. So that's a couple of thoughts about appendices. I think appendices are often overlooked and underestimated as to the contribution that they can make to your degree and to your final report. I even had a couple of appendices where it was suggested to me that content should go back into the main body of my report. But typically what you'll find is if your thesis is getting too long and too wordy, and also if you're getting comments back from your supervisors that they're not quite clear how something fits in the section that you've put it, just move it to the appendix, put it in there for now, put it under a certain heading, and just keep your main document as clean and clear and logical and practical as possible. And then it's so easy just to reference that appendix. Just because it's in the appendix doesn't mean people aren't going to read it. In fact, there's a greater chance they'll read it because you put it in the right place, and it's not going to obscure the logical flow of the argument in the main part of the document. So good luck, and don't underestimate the power of appendices.